Thank you, Mr. Parnas.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
The letter makes several interesting sets of topics available to everyone. Right on page 1, you talk about the team of people trying to oust the ambassador, and you mentioned both Attorney General Barr and Senator Lindsey Graham, both obviously current office holders. What can you say about their role?
Well, each individual that I mentioned had a different role. Some agreed with the situation, some disagreed with it, but some were just sucked into it, and some of them were against it, like Ambassador Bolton. I want to also make it clear that when I gave my interview to Rachel, I wasn't aware that these clips of Ambassador Bolton's book are going to come out, and I stated very strongly that Ambassador Bolton, because I figured with his integrity, he will tell the truth, and if he tells the truth, it will validate everything that I said, because, like I said, he knows everything that was going on because he was in the White House. I know everything that was going on because of two sources. A, I was on the ground, but B, I was directly in contact with Rudy Giuliani, who was basically the president's right hand to mastermind the whole plan. And one of the things is that I think the senators are very scared for this to get out witnesses, because it's not just what John Bolton has to say. It's what the can of worms that are going to open up. And I think when the book comes out, there's a lot of things that are going to start coming out, like some of the ways that Ambassador Yovanovitch was fired. I mean, it's just embarrassing to go into it, but I think when Ambassador Bolton comes out and says, because Rudy Giuliani went several times and came back and told me the situation, it's very upsetting to see Pat Cipollone and Jay Sekulow. I mean, Pat Cipollone was in several meetings, and I think when the book comes out, that will be also something of a revelation. Were
you aware, Lev, of Pat Cipollone being in any meetings other than the one that Bolton mentions, according to the New York Times article?
Absolutely. There are several that Rudy told me. He was, in majority, it was him. Mulvaney was mostly there, and Bolton was at some. Pompeo was at some, but Cipollone was at most of them when Giuliani told me.
And when you mentioned, as I said earlier, Lindsey Graham, what, if anything, did Giuliani say about Lindsey Graham's role in removing the ambassador, and was he aware at the time of the larger plot of trying to get the Biden probe at that time, before it was public?
Lindsey Graham was, to my knowledge, Giuliani told me his involvement was going back to at least December of 18, when he told me that one of his investigators, Bart Schwartz, had one of his operatives write some letters to Lindsey that Giuliani delivered, talking about certain corruption in Ukraine and certain people that were associated with it. Giuliani asked me to meet with that individual, which I did, and vetted a little bit. Then Lindsey, back in January when we did the Shokin interview, Giuliani didn't trust the FBI or anybody he could take it to. The only person he said he trusts is Lindsey Graham, and that's who he would take it to. So it was understood that even at early stages that Lindsey Graham was involved and aware of what was going on. Now, what he did, that's what we have, a trial for. And if the witnesses come out, we would hear more, and we would see if he took any action on certain things that I could testify and certain dates that Giuliani told me.
And in your new letter, you say you would have testified to a conversation that you say you heard between Giuliani and Rick Perry, who was then running the Energy Department, and, quote, you said a quid pro quo was conveyed by Mr. Perry to Zelensky. What can you tell us about that?
Absolutely. That was part of the whole plan. When Vice President Pence was canceled to go to the inauguration, the Ukrainians held an emergency parliamentary meeting to be able to get that done quickly, not to get embarrassed, because they didn't know who the United States was going to send. The reason why Rick Perry was sent was because he is very good friends with Rudy Giuliani. They know each other for a long time. And he was chosen because he would give the right message. At that time, I wasn't aware that he was one of the three amigos, but now listening to the evidence, it makes even more sense why it was Perry that went. On the way there, I was in Paris with Rudy, and Rudy told me about the message that he told Bolton, excuse me, not Bolton, but Secretary Perry Ambassador Perry to translate to President Zelensky at the time. And then when Perry left Ukraine, we waited till he got to the States because he didn't want to talk from Ukraine. And he called Rudy, and he was on speakerphone, where he basically told him that he conveyed the message and that everything's going to be great, and Zelensky would follow through. And actually, if you recall and you do take a look at that time, Zelensky did make an announcement. He made an announcement about corruption, if I recall properly, and that upset also Giuliani, because Perry, after the inauguration, they wanted it to be executive, to say Biden's.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.